In this video, we're going to talk about setting up a VPN on the Palo Alto firewall. Now, setting up a VPN on the Palo Alto is a little bit more complicated than you might see on other VPN devices. However, that complication also allows for improved performance and capabilities. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we might be doing here. Here we have our network diagram, and the idea is that out here on the public VLAN, we have the internet. And so we want a PC that is out here on the internet to be able to browse through the public VLAN and then VPN into our private network. So they should be able to reach through to our private network and connect on there as if they were a local user. So there we go. There's the great thing about this configuration that we have set up here is, even though it's not shown here, this management VLAN is actually attached to the simulated internet. So this management workstation that we have we can not only use in order to configure our Palo Alto, but we can also use it to test our configuration. So the process is, like I said, a little bit complicated. However, if we follow the steps, it can work. Step number one is go ahead and configure Active Directory authentication. If you've watched my prior videos, we've already done that, so we can build on top of that. The next step is to set up what's called an authentication profile. And to do that, let's go ahead and jump in to our Palo Alto and set that up. So our authentication profile here in our Palo Alto, we'll just go ahead and go to device. And on the left hand side here, we have an authentication profile option. So we want to create a new authentication profile. And what this does is it just allows us to create a profile that we can then point to our domain controllers. So it's called, my domain is group 60. So I'll go ahead and call this group 60-AP for authentication profile. The type is LDAP. Server profile right here is my group 60, which I've previously created. And then user domain, while not necessary, this allows my users to be able to log in without having to type in their full domain name. So what I can do is just go ahead and type in my domain. That's group60.it340.local. And then on the advanced tab, we specify who we want to be able to authenticate through this, who we want to allow. So I'm going to say add. And we can see, well, we have some groups already that we've previously allowed through user ID. I'm just going to say all. So everybody can be able to log into this environment. And then, okay, and my authentication profile is set up. Check authentication profile. The next step is to set up some certificates. Now this, if you have a actual corporate certificate server, or if you are using this in the production realm, you would want to have external certificates set up for this, as opposed to the private certificates that we're going to be setting up here. So what we're doing here, at least the first step, will work for a lab environment. For production environments, you'll want to go out to a place like GoDaddy or Network Solutions or somebody else that actually publishes or sells SSL certificates. So we're going to go, again, still in device, and then just like when we did certificates before, under certificate management, we go to certificates. And I want to generate a new certificate. This one I'm going to call, because I have very little ideas of how to name things, I'm going to call it very simply GlobalProtect. Doesn't necessarily need to be super original. This certificate is going to be for GlobalProtect, which is the VPN client. So I'll call it GlobalProtect. I'll type that for both the certificate name and the common name, and then I'll check this as a certificate authority. By marking this guy as a certificate authority, it means he can create additional certificates, which is the key point for the next step. This right here is not necessary if you have an actual production certificate that you are getting for the internet, such as from GoDaddy or other certificate authorities, VeriSign or whoever else might be out there. But since this is a lab, I will say generate. Great. And then I will also generate another one. And let's see, this one I will call external gateway. Let's see, external GW GW for gateway portal. The certificate name is a friendly name. After that, we type in the common name, which is what computers use to authenticate who you are. I'm going to use the IP address, my external IP address of my Palo Alto that's connected to the private network. If I had DNS fully set up, that's what I would want to type in here as opposed to the IP. I don't want to mark this guy as a certificate authority. Instead, I want to say he is signed by the GlobalProtect certificate authority that we just created. If you're familiar with certificates, that hopefully makes sense. If you're not, well, just go with it. There we go. Our certificates have been generated. All right, so we've gone ahead, we've set up our certificates. We used an IP address of the external IP of our firewall. If we had DNS fully set up, I would have used that, and that would have been preferred. The next step is to set up our SSL/TLS profile. Basically allows us to specify what version of SSL/TLS do we want to support. So again, back in the Palo Alto device certificate management. Nope, wrong slide. Excuse me. Actually, yes, certificate management, SSL/TLS service profile. And we'll say add. Again, for the name, let's just go ahead and call this GlobalProtect. I had a better name planned out for this, but I don't recall what it is. GlobalProtect-SP for service profile. Certificate, here we specify which certificate we want to use, in which case we want to use our external protocol or certificate. Minimum version, minimum would be TLS 1.0. SSL is pretty much insecure. TLS 1.0 is currently the standard. 1.1 I believe is becoming the standard, and then 1.2 is kind of the future looking. Don't take me granted for those. It's been a while since I've actually looked to see what the current standards are, so I might be a little out of date on that. So once that's done, I'll go ahead and create it. All right, back to our list here. We just set up our SSL/TLS profile. Somehow I checked that ahead of time. The next step is setting up a tunnel interface. The tunnel interface, that's how our clients are actually tunneling into our environment. And this is starting to be where things get complicated. Let's see. So for this, we have to go to the network tab. And we want to specify interfaces, and this is how we normally see it right here, is with our different interfaces. What we want to do is up here on this sub tab, we want to specify tunnel, the tunnel sub tab, and we want to add a tunnel interface. The tunnel interfaces all start off with the name tunnel. What we do is we just give it a number here, and the number I believe can be anything from 0 to 999. Let's actually check that out again. 9,999. For lack of originality, I'm going to go with 11. Specify the virtual router. In this case, I only have the one, so that makes it really simple. And then the security zone, I want the tunnel interface on the private security zone. All right, say okay. And then we're back to our list here. So we just set up we it looks like we got most of it done there, but actually these last two steps here, setting up the gateways and setting up the portal, are the major steps. All this up above here was kind of the preparation. And then these guys right here is the actual setup. This is the actual VPN portion right here. So setting up the gateway. The VPN gateway is how people are accessing our machines. So for that, get my notes here. For that, we come back to the portal here. And excuse me while I try to find my notes. All right, so in order to set up the VPN gateway, back here again under network, we want to specify under GlobalProtect, and we want to specify gateway. From here we say add, and then we give it a nice name. Lack of originality reigns here, so I'm just going to go with GP-external-gateway. And we specify what interface should this gateway be listening on. I know from my diagram that is Ethernet 1-3. Let's actually see my diagram right there. My public interface is on 1-3. Along with that, this is IPv4, and then the IPv4 address right there, it lists the IPv4 address that is assigned with Ethernet 1.3. If I had multiple assigned, then I would specify it right there. Along with specifying the IP address, I want to specify authentication. How do I want people to authenticate? Well, they need to use SSL, that's for one thing, so I can go ahead and tell it to use my SSL profile. Additionally, for client authentication, I need to add. Here I can call it anything I want, so let's call this Active Directory. And then the authentication profile, I choose my group 60 authentication profile I created previously. And then I can see here when it prompts people, it will say, hey, what's your username, what's your password, and enter login credentials. I can customize these if I want. For instance, I can put a smiley face at the end of enter login credentials. Okay, so once that's done, we then go into agent and we get to configure how the agent actually connects. First one is we want this to use tunnel mode. So not just tunnel mode to VPN in, but we also want to specify which tunnel and ensure the IPsec is enabled. So it is an IPsec tunnel as opposed to any other kind of tunnel. After that, we go to client settings, and we need to add some client settings so that we can add in the authentication override options. Let's call this gp-client-config. And then under IP pools, all of these machines are going to need some IPs when they come in. So let's go ahead and give it an IP range. Let's see my internal network. 10.1.0. Let's say 50 through 10.1.0.60. I'm only giving him 11 IPs to be able to VPN in. If this was a production environment, I would most likely have an entire Class C or multiple Class Cs for people to log in with. Say OK. Let's configure some network services while we're here. For instance, the primary DNS. I want this to point to my DNS server, my internal DNS server, which is also my domain controller. 10.1.0.100. Secondary, if that one's unavailable, let's go to Google 8888. All right, and say OK. So that is our gateway setup. Awesome. Now we get to work on the portal. Portal, as you can probably imagine, is right next to the gateway under Network, GlobalProtect, Portals. So the portal, in theory, is how people connect to the Palo Alto, and then the gateway allows them into the company. So let's go ahead and create a new portal. We'll call this one just simply GlobalProtect Portal. Again, which interface does this belong on? We want this to be on our external and the external IP address. After that, let's go to authentication. This is essentially a repeat of what we did under gateway. We still want everybody to be able to authenticate to the portal the same way that they authenticated to the gateway. And let's actually change this guy to a frowny face, just so we can see where the different pop-ups show. Let's see, this time agent. Again, let's do an agent config. Portal-agent-config. And let's see, internal. What we want to do is we want an internal host detection. How can I tell if I'm internal to the company or external to the company? Basically, I want to ping something. In this case, I'm going to ping the gateway. And I could do an IP address and a host name. I'm going to cheat and just use the IP address for both of those. Let's see. And then internal, and then external. What I need to do is add the external gateway, which I just created. So let's call this ext-gw-1 for the gateway. And I want to give it the IP address of my external system, my external IP. So that's 192.168.116.72. I'm using 72 for my external IP. So that's why I'm typing that in there. Source region, we can specify which regions or which IP groups can access this portal, this gateway through the portal. So I can have like 5 different gateways here and then one portal. So each person goes to the closest gateway in their environment. Here, I'm just saying all, any user from the portal can access this gateway. So again, if I had, say, North America, South America, Europe, India, those kinds of things, I would add in additional gateways here and then specify for the source regions those different locations or those different IP breakdowns. And okay. And then last thing we need to do is there is a GlobalProtect client that we need to publish to the portal. This is under device and GlobalProtect client. So if we close these up right here, right there, GlobalProtect client. One very important thing, and I learned this the hard way. Click check now down at the bottom. Let it download the latest updates from Palo Alto. And then we're just going to choose the latest version. In this case, it's 5.05. I want to say download. This will download the package, the 5.05 GlobalProtect agent to the Palo Alto. Successfully downloaded. And then click activate to make this the currently active version. And it also means that when I go to the portal, that version will be available for me to download. All right, so there we go. We've gone through, we've configured Active Directory, we've set up the authentication profile, we've set up our certificates, we've set up our TLS profile, our tunnel interface, we did our gateways, and we did our portal. The very last thing we need to do is test it. See if this works. Oh, I forgot. And you might be actually laughing at me right here. I forgot one very critical component. Commit. I forgot to commit these configuration changes. I know. How could I forget something quite so simple? Well, let's go ahead and commit that. And we'll let that run through. And when that commit is done, then we can actually test this environment. It does give us one error right here saying, hey, your tunnel does not have IPv6 enabled. In this case, it's a lab environment. We're not working IPv6. That is more than sufficient. All right, so let's go ahead and say, oh, close that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new in private browsing session. This is Chrome, so I can just hit Control-Shift-N to open up a new session. If you are using Internet Explorer, I believe you can right click on somewhere and tell it to do a private in browsing session. It's been a while since I've used that, so don't know that off the top of my head. So what I want to do is I want to browse via HTTPS to the private IP address, the public IP address of my Palo Alto, the IP address I was just typing in for my public gateway. In this case, 192.168.116.72 is my public IP address for my Palo Alto. It gives me a certificate warning. You know what? Actually, I want to stop that. Cancel that. Let's go back. Let's fix those certificate warnings first. Let's go back to certificate management. Certificates. This GlobalProtect certificate right here, if I export that, I don't need the private key, just export it to the machine here. And then I'm going to open that up and I'm going to say install. Local machine. And I want to install this in the Trusted Root Certificate Authority store. I wanted to actually trust the certificate. Now, again, if this was a production environment, this would be most likely somebody signed by VeriSign or somebody else that's publicly trusted already, and therefore that step's not needed. But I'm doing it here. Okay, so one more time, https:// 192.168.116.72, and in theory this time the certificate warning will not be there. Did I type that right? HTTPS. Why is there certificate warning still here? All right, we'll click through and then I'll check it. Issue 2 192.168.116.72, that is correct. What does this say? It just says it's insecure. Yep, that is the correct. Well, okay. I guess we'll go with it. At this point, I should be able to log into the global portal here, and I should be able to log in with any Active Directory credentials. So, for instance, I have a local user in my Active Directory called administrator. And I will log in with the administrator password of password01. And this logs me into the portal to where I can simply download the agent. So I would say, yes, go ahead and download the 64-bit agent. And as it downloads, I'll click on it and install. Minimize that, and we can see GlobalProtect tries to go ahead and log in. It's already got the portal IP. Awesome. Now I just type in my Active Directory username and password and say sign in. We can see we've got a frowny face here, so that remember we typed in the frowny face. Yeah. So sign in, and if everything is working properly, it should connect here in just a second. Connected! Yay! I can confirm this using standard Windows tools. Let's go to a command prompt and ipconfig I see I now have two IP addresses. The 172.31.200.59, that was the IP address I had previously. And then I can also see I have my VPN connection of 10.1.0.50. If I come down here to my network here, let's see, there's the GlobalProtect icon. If I click on that, click the little hamburger menu here and say disable, that will drop the connection. Sad face. It's disabled. And then come back to my prompt here, up arrow, do the IP config, and we'll see that 10.1.0.50 is now gone. So we can confirm GlobalProtect is in fact connecting me to my internal network using the VPN. Was it a lot of steps? Yes, it was. However, if the steps worked properly, then all of our issues go through pretty easily. So I hope you have a chance to try this out, and I hope it works. If not, go through it again and try to run it through it, and let me know if you have any major issues.